Welcome to Moto Mouths, the podcast for MotoGP, motorsports, and more. My name is Zoe, and like Taylor Swift's seminal album, I'm feeling red.
Oh, great start. I think I'm also Zoe, and like her debut album, I'm feeling self-titled. I think that's where I'm at right now.
I've never heard somebody describe themselves as self-titled.
I just think it means I'm really feeling my brand.
Much like Taylor Swift's first album, this podcast is making its debut.
Yeah, with two girls named Zoe.
Let's get right into we're launching and everybody's launching, and it's the season of launching.
It is not the holiday season, launching season, in which we get some good news, some fine news, or we just get a whole lot of nothing. So I'm ready to jump in if you are.
Let's jump right into it.
Trackhouse was the big launch we're going to talk about first. And I say big because it's false. It was not big at all. I don't know if you want to start out with kind of what you were thinking.
So this is my first year of MotoGP launches and actually paying attention to MotoGP launches.
Welcome to the family.
And so, thank you. I think it is so funny all the time to hear Brits talk about North Carolina. I'm watching this and the reporter is like, I can't believe it's -1 degree where you are. And I'm like, I'm sorry. In the land of Cheerwine, according to who? It's -1 degree.
The land of Cheerwine and cookout and beaches and flip-flops. Yeah, -1 degree.
I thought that it was an interesting launch. I thought it was interesting to combine it with NASCAR and to really lean into the Americanness. I thought the blue was clean. I like that it was kind of matte. I don't know if it's actually matte. I guess time will tell, but what were your thoughts?
I've been really excited to talk to you about Trackhouse because I feel completely differently. I really am not a fan of it. I think, one, I miss the campy Americana. I miss that.
Okay.
I think that is one of Trackhouse's kind of big draws and big value adds in MotoGP is that really American in-your-face appearance and vibe. And I'm not getting that from them at all in what looks to be their 2025 livery. I think the blue is fine. It was a bit of a subpar launch in the sense that it didn't really feel exciting. It didn't really feel like they brought a brand identity beyond just being like, we're Trackhouse and we're here.
It felt very corporate.
Yeah, which is not the kind of American vibe you really want to be bringing to MotoGP.
Yeah, it's like MotoGP as a sport is so, I feel at times, so unserious. And it was very much like, we're here, we put our big boy outfit on, and we're gonna be taken seriously as Trackhouse. And it felt very almost like the music was very like corporate music, the kind that you get royalty free, and for like a sexual harassment training. Like it was not fun and exciting. If you had to pick an ideal Trackhouse launch, what would you include?
I think in a perfect world with Trackhouse, you go all in on the NASCAR partnership with it. You go all in on all of these pieces coming together. And it is truly a double launch. I'm not totally sure if NASCAR does launching the way, MotoGP does or F1 does. But make it a double launch. Make it a big deal. Bring all the drivers there. Have it be almost like a Red Bull kind of situation where you have the entire Trackhouse family. I think that's the way to do it, to have the brand actually show up and show out.
Like, let's see the bike go around an oval.
Yeah,
if you're going to tie it to NASCAR. Yeah, like, don't have British reporters covering the launch.
Honestly, go to Nashville. Like, do something.
Ooh,
do
that would be
something
interesting.
Campy and American. Like, Texas is overdone. We know that already for like European motorsports. But like, there's a rumor that will probably be going to Nashville for a second American GP sometime in the next couple of years. So get the foot in the door. Go to Nashville.
North Carolina has good... the Charlotte Motor Speedway.
Yes, there's so many options, and I think that's ultimately my issue with it. It just felt sad. And motorbikes are sexy. They shouldn't be sad.
Trackhouse, if I had to give one advice to you, I see that you are you're very in your like corporate girly mode. So I'm going to give one piece of advice to you. Lean in.
Lean in, leave the red bottoms to the rest of the corporate girly community. Embrace your identity as campy American nonsense. Speaking of blue,
hit me.
Gresini also launched. And this is, I will say, one of my, thus far in the launching for the 2025 season, this is thus far my biggest disappointment, is that Gresini, for a couple of years now, has had, I think, one of the most visually pleasing liveries, from the bike to the rider leathers, with that kind of soft baby blue and then the red striping. And what's really cool about it in the last couple of years is the red striping on the bike corresponds to the red striping on the leathers when they're like leaned over on the bike. And I just think visually it's such a great puzzle piece of design. They got rid of all the red. There's no more red.
Yeah, no more red.
No more red. It's all blue and it's all silver. These are the two creative choices they've really made that I'm tracking, which is a lot of blue and a lot of silver, including what looks to be silver friction pads on the inside of the rider leathers on their thighs. So, like, I don't really know what's going on there. Don't really understand the design sense on that one. Visually, it is one of the most disappointing ones for me this preseason. The other thing about Gresini that I think they actually did very, very well, and this is, I think, a really interesting piece of the overall rider market that was so different coming from 2023 to 24 and now 25. Obviously, Marc Marquez was with Gresini last year, and that was a huge, huge get for them. What a lot of people expected is for Gresini to then, in 2024, sign all of these huge sponsors who now want to work with a big name like Marc Marquez. What Gresini did last year is they were very intentional about the sponsors that they, kept on their bike or were starting partnerships with. And they were open about this from the very beginning of the 2024 season. They knew that Marc was not planning to stick around for more than a year. And so they talked about it at the launch this year as well. It was all meant to be kind of respecting and promoting the partnerships that they've had for this long period of time and that they've been investing in that relationship with, because these partners stuck around with them through the Marc Marquez moment and are sticking around with them after it.
To me, genuine sponsorships where it's like there is an alignment, where they seem to get along, where they have creative output of the sponsorship will always be, I'd rather have fewer of those than more sponsorships that are just shallow. That's not the best financial advice.
It can be, though. Because longevity is the name of the game and these kind of things.
Right.
Like, motorsports is inherently a very turbulent sport. Like, even in F1, I can't imagine that, like, Ryan Reynolds and, like, all of those celebrities that are investing in Alpine, I can't imagine that's going to last very long. There's no way.
Travis Kelce.
Yeah. I don't even know how they got them in the door in the first place.
Taylor's going to make them sell it.
Probably.
Shall we talk Aprilia?
Yeah,
I hear this is not how you pronounce it.
Aprilia and Jorge Martin. Speaking of Aprilia, speaking of the Aprilia factory team, the big story, in my opinion, the big story of the Aprilia launch was Jorge Martin debuting the number 1 plate on his bike for 2025.
Mm-hmm.
So I know I have thoughts about it, but since you're the newcomer, I want to hear your quick reaction.
Well, I think that the acquiring of the number 1 in motorsports is such a unique characteristic of sport in general.
And it says a lot about the athlete.
I agree. Like, who declines it and who takes it on. But what I didn't like about Jorge taking on the number 1 is that he put his old number in the corner. If you are the world champion, in my opinion, it should be your mindset that that number 1 is your number for as long as you can hold on to it. And you're like Max Verstappen.
You do not see 33 around that man.
Never.
You will not see one until he is legally required to race under it.
Until it is forced out of his hands, because it is not in his mindset that he is not going to be the number 1 next year.
Completely.
So to me, if you are putting your old number also on your bike, you're saying, oh, it's just this year. Let me think about my branding for next. Like, that's coward. Commit.
And you really touched on it. It's a branding thing for Jorge, I think, before anything else. I mean, psychologically, he's been through a lot to get to his championship. I think that goes without saying. And so I think there's an element of I did all of this with this number. I don't want to let that go. But it's also, he said it. He's like, I don't want to let 89 go and have that be the most recognizable thing about me and then have to let that go for number 1. Interestingly, looking back at the history of MotoGP, in the modern era, and I'm talking early 2000s to now, most champions don't run under the number 1.
Right.
And a lot of the times, specifically talking about, in this case, Valentino Rossi and Marc Marquez, who neither of them used number 1, they did do it for a branding reason. They truly were just nope, I'm not interested. So yeah, I think it's really interesting that Jorge kind of kept everybody on their toes about it for so long. He didn't really say anything about it until the launch. And so that's why it's the really big story.
I think that the use of reserving number 1 is almost bygone, because it used to be, right, that you were the number that you finished the year before. Was that in MotoGP 2 or just F1?
No, I mean, I don't know about before it was MotoGP, when it was the CCs, but it hasn't been that in a while.
So in F1, it was it was the number that you placed the year before. And people would win with their numbers, and that would become a really important number to them. Keke Rosberg won with number 6, which is why Nico Rosberg picked up number 6 and then won the world championship with it. I think if that's the case, then just don't pick up the number 1. I think that this is it's almost a bygone era of, I don't think it has relevance in the day and age of branding being so important.
I kind of agree with you from the branding perspective, because as a MotoGP fan and a watcher, I'm not stupid. I know who Jorge Martin is, whether or not he's running under 1 or 89. I think the branding thing is by and large I think that's kind of a cop-out answer, but I do also think that running the 1, or at least having the opportunity to, and keeping anyone else from running with it, I think that is a huge psychological tool that you can have in motorsports, and especially in MotoGP, which is such a mind game sport.
Mm.
So that's kind of my feeling about it. I think it's a little bit cringe he's running with the 1, because in MotoGP it just isn't really done that way anymore. Not for any specific reason, just how it has been. But I love that Max runs with the 1.
Yeah.
I think seeing a 1 on anyone other than Max, just based on my personal experience, is going to be really weird.
Well, because nobody wore it for, what, 7 years, 6 years?
Yeah.
Like, that's the other thing is that Lewis was kind of the first to shirk the tradition, and he's the king of branding.
Yes.
That makes total sense to me. But if you think the last person to run with a number 1 before Max was Seb.
My Red Bull Golden Boys.
So it's all very interesting. I don't think it's cringe necessarily. I just want him to commit to it. Don't put your other number on there. Just commit.
I think if you're going to do one, just pick one.
Exactly.
Other than all the talk about the number 1 plate, this was also the debut of Marco Bezzecchi on his Aprilia. He had a
Buzz.
Buzz, our best friend. He had a pretty shit 2024. So, like, you know what? I think him going for a completely fresh start, new team, factory team, partnering the world champion, the pressure's off of him in a certain way. All he has to do is just not be shit again. And I really hope he can do it. I want him to.
I think it'll be good for him. I'm looking forward to him not flopping.
Yeah. Yes.
So don't flop.
Yeah, Bez. Manifesting a no flop season for Bez. Oh, actually, one other thing. Last year, Jorge Martin talked about pretty openly that he started working with a sports psychologist.
Which is a crazy good thing, but crazy thing to admit in this MotoGP. Sport.
Yes, I agree on both counts. And he was asked, you know, like, are you going to continue that? Do you think that's, you know, something you still need? And he said, I'm paraphrasing, absolutely, I'll be doing it for the rest of my life. So as much as I hate a Jorge Martin, you know, title, I really have to, like, respect where he's coming from the mental health of it all.
I mean, who's to say that's not why we have a Jorge Martin title?
Yeah, no, that's a great point. His issue was consistency, and he turned that shit around.
Mental health matters at the end of the day.
And you know what? I support men.
I support men in therapy. Let's call it what it is.
Let's be specific.
I think all men.
Stop there. So let's talk Ducati.
Ducati.
I don't know how much you watched, you know, beyond the actual launch kind of stream, but some critical context. Ducati, for a couple of years now, has done about a 3 to 5 day launch event. And it's at a resort in the mountains in Italy. And they fly everyone out. They bring out all the journalists. They bring out, obviously, the riders. They bring out a huge, huge part of the Ducati staff. And they make, like, a very long weekend out of it. Apparently the, like, dessert and the food the whole weekend is out of this world. The tiramisu is apparently incredible. And they also do a lot of skiing.
So there was an intimacy to this launch between Mark and his bike, which was, I felt I was intruding on something. But the other thing that really interested me about this launch was the dynamic between Pecco and Mark, which everybody under the sun has talked about, and I think was exemplified in this quote that, again, everybody has talked about, where Pecco says he will continue to be the gentleman and Mark will continue to be Mark, which is, if I were Pecco, I would not say ever in my life.
The thing about Pecco is that he has said something along these lines many times before. And so I agree, like, he shouldn't be saying this, but he keeps saying it. And so it, I think, in some ways kind of dilutes the impact that he keeps saying it.
Yeah.
But it's, like, critically, Ducati did a documentary series kind of their own, like, mini-sodes over the course of the 24 season. And there's a scene with Davide and Pecco where Davide from the Ducati, management team is saying, you need to stop being a gentleman because Martin is
100%.
You need to stop. And I just find it so interesting that he is, like, digging his heels in and kind of is, like,
for what?
Committed to this.
For what? This is not a sport for gentlemen. There are no gentlemen in motorsport writ large. It is not a sport to be dignified. It is specifically undignified. It is greasy. It is dirty. It is tricky. It is fast, and it is ugly. For you to say, I'm a gentleman, I'm rising above it, is tantamount to you saying, I'm a loser and I have no interest in changing that.
Yes. And critically, Pecco doesn't think about it like that. Like, he really truly thinks that a win secured by anything other than on-track perfection, my take on it is that he doesn't believe that that's a worthwhile way to win.
I think Mark's going to wipe the floor with them this year.
He already kind of did, mentally.
Yeah.
Well, that's our predictions for 2025.
And to summarize their livery, which we didn't really touch on, it's red.
It's red. It's a lot of red.
It's a lot of red.
That's about
what do you expect from the red teams? They're going to be red.
The red teams. Yeah.
Speaking of not red, neon yellow.
Yeah. Speaking of Valentino, great segue. The VR46 team also launched this weekend. Again, I think this was just a launch. I hated their liveries in 24, and they didn't change anything for 25. So I hate it again.
It was, to me, the worst part of it was on one of the numbers. I don't remember whose bike it is because I didn't see it on both bikes. I only saw it on one. Behind the main number, there's like a number. It's the 46 written in like light gray almost. Let me tell you something. A color that does not work for visibility against fluorescent neon yellow is light gray.
Correct.
And I think MotoGP posted about it on social and was like, it's all about the details. And I'm like, it's not about the details if you can't see it.
Yeah, it's not about the details if the details are bad.
Exactly. So they're in bright yellow.
The only good thing about the VR46 situation visually is that you cannot miss them.
So true.
It's the only good thing. That's all I got.
I like yellow, and that color yellow ruins yellow for me. Speaking of red, Lewis Hamilton and Ferrari for realsies.
For realsies.
No one does it like him.
Correct. It was insane. And for all the Americans, it is exactly what I needed at that exact
100%.
I needed someone serving mob wife taking over the house. That's what I needed.
I'm sorry, Charles. You may be Ferrari's little pretty princess. Princessa. But Lewis came in and Lewis is the fucking emperor.
Yes. Conquering.
Like that. Ooh. He ate that shit. in the red, in the car, in the cape with the little cup of espresso.
And when he was holding the rice in his hands, the pose was impeccable.
Him, like, I didn't know how hard it would hit to see Lewis Hamilton and Maranello in red. And by God, did that shit hit hard. The only bad thing about the Ferrari red Lewis, that ugly fucking HP logo. Get that
so bad.
shit away from me. And he knows it. He's walking around with a jacket covering his fireproof, so you don't have to see that ugly fucking HP blue just dead in the center. It's hideous.
I did really like his yellow helmet.
Oh, beautiful.
I think that's a really nice choice. I'm excited to see where he goes for the rest of the season from a design perspective, because we know he loves that. You know what actually also really hit? All of the blurry photos of, I think it was Angela.
My queen?
His previous, I guess,
Trainer,
I guess is the word. I think she was she's a version of a life partner.
Yeah.
It was really sad when she left, I think, a year and a half ago? Well,
anyways, welcome back, queen.
Yeah. We missed you.
Yeah.
That made me really emotional. I can't lie.
Speaking of women in sports, Jack Doohan.
My girlfriend, Jack Doohan?
Not doing okay.
Yeah.
You see those photos of Franco with Flavio, and it's over, Jackie D.
To admit defeat. But it's coming.
It's Jover.
It's
Jack off.
Stop.
It was Jack on, and now it's Jack off. So not good for Jack. Speaking of French, Esty Bestie at Haas will have a female engineer, the first full-time female engineer. That's so exciting to me. That's Angela's back, female engineer on the radio. It's going to be such a good year. I can feel it.
And after the 2024 that Haas had, which was very good.
Yeah.
I'm kind of excited to see how it goes.
I'm excited to see what Haas and Honda can do together.
We'll see.
That brings us to our final segment, which is a little something we like to call the grid as ... where we pick a handful of drivers from the wide world of motorsport and we assign them to something. Now, I'll give you two options. We can do red drivers as other famous red things, or red drivers as songs off the seminal album Red by Taylor Allison Swift.
I would like to do Taylor Swift, please.
All right. You get Mark and Pecco.
Okay, you're putting me on the spot. I think off of Red is Mean.
That's not on Red. That's on Speak Now.
God damn it, we're cutting this. I was so excited. Wait, question. Are we talking Red original release or are we talking Taylor's
No,
version?
TV.
Okay. Doing a quick scroll then. Don't take my Swiftie card, please. Okay. I've done some thinking, and here are my choices. For Pecco, I've got two. One of them, I think, is I Knew You Were Trouble. Has to be. Now I'm lying on the cold, hard ground after losing the 2024 championship.
100%.
Obviously, Mark is the fox in the hen house, so duh. I think it's either for Pecco, it's either I Knew You Were Trouble or Holy Ground. I don't know. I think there's just a vibe from Holy Ground that's kind of Pecco's mentality for 2025. Also, he's recently married. Like, he is in like a real great personal way. Like, he's solid.
He's riding on cloud 9.
Yes, except for all the ways that he is not.
Which is that not Red as an album?
Yeah. For Mark, I think Red as an album could go, anything could go for Mark, but I'm going to have to go with All Too Well. And
which All Too Well?
Great question. Both.
Okay.
What I love about Mark is that he lies all the time. He lies all the time. And I think one of my favorite things about All Too Well, the original version and the 10-minute version, is that they both tell similar but very, very, very different narratives.
Mm-hmm.
And the 10-minute version completely shifts the way you think about the original release with all of the added material. And so I think that's Mark to me. You never know when he's going to say something that's going to completely shift the way you thought about a period of his like career or the way he's thinking about a race. You just kind of don't know what's going to come out of his mouth and how it's going to affect the sport, a race, the championship, a team, etc. So that's my thinking.
I agree 100%. I would also propose for Pecco Starlight.
Explain.
Don't you dream of impossible things?
Yeah.
I think that's kind of
impossible things.
I think it speaks to the floating with like this undercurrent of. It's also a song about the Kennedys. It's Bobby and Ethel, and it's if anybody's a gentleman, it's Bobby and Ethel. Specifically,
that's a
Bobby.
Really great point.
Thank you.
Mm-hmm.
I have nothing to say about Mark. I agree.
Great.
I think that Mark is actually this cover of All Too Well that I really love, where the guy says, "Till you fucked it all up," instead of tore it all up, which I appreciate. And she should have said.
Yeah, I agree.
I'm going to take the Red Drivers of F1.
Mm-hmm.
Charles. You would think maybe you'd come in and you'd say, Charles, he's All Too Well 10-minute version, Sad Girl Autumn version, recorded at Long Pond Studios. No. You would think, oh, he's Nothing New with Phoebe Bridgers. No. He is classically, from the classic original Red, he is Sad, Beautiful, Tragic.
Wow. Yeah.
And I have nothing more to say. It's just correct.
Can I tell you where I was thinking about this?
Yes.
To me, Charles is Message in a Bottle at the Club.
Sure.
I think they're two Charles.
I think that if you want to find the merger between Charles at the Club and Sad, Beautiful, Tragic Charles, it's Come Back, Be Here.
Oh, yes.
So I think that there's a spectrum of Charles, a spectrum. And I think that Sad, Beautiful, Tragic just sums it all up.
Sorry, we could talk about this all day.
Yeah.
I Almost Do. I think before 2024, I Almost Do, I think could really work. But now that he's won Monaco, I think there's a lot of...
Exactly.
Things change.
He almost did. He did.
He did.
Lewis. Lewis is a tough nut to crack. Understatement of the century. I think he's Red. I think he is the song Red.
I see that.
I think it's this. He is every color of the rainbow that culminates to this. He is culminating at Ferrari. It is the culmination of his career. You know, it's Missing Him is Blue Like I Never Known. It's whatever. Dark Gray, All Alone. Trying to know somebody I never met, but loving him was red. Like it's the culmination of it all.
Well, it's also Ferrari is always the dream. I think he's said this before too. And he always, you know, like everybody wants to race for Ferrari. So I think it is just, he's not a super emotional guy.
No.
And I think this is an emotional decision for him. Like he's said as much. I would also say that Red, the song, I think is kind of self-aware. Like I think it is
100%.
I think it's one of Taylor's most self-aware works, especially when you consider the fact that she named the album after it.
Yes.
And I think that is Lewis to a T.
100%. I could literally categorize every single driver who has ever been in Red by Taylor Swift song.
That's a project for a different day.
That is so true. This has been Monomouths.
Thanks for listening, you guys.
Let us know if you have any disagreements or agreements with us about which drivers are which Red songs. And we will see you next time.
We'll talk about some more launches next time.
Woo!